There is an incredible power hidden in each of us, lurking in the shadows of everyday life, often eluding our conscious awareness. It's not about newfangled relaxation practices or meticulous record-keeping, and certainly not those ephemeral manifestation of desires rituals so persistently recommended on social media. It's about something much more fundamental, the spark that ignites the flame of change, the ability to focus. It is focus, not grueling work or an unwavering work ethic. That is the true key to shaping reality. This is not just a beautiful metaphor, but a literal reflection of the laws of the universe. Objects and phenomena that are the focus of attention tend to grow and expand, while anything that is ignored gradually fades from view. The paradox is that most people unconsciously direct their energy toward what they most want to avoid. With manic persistence, they fixate on the wrongs inflicted by others, on shortcomings and limitations, on feelings of hopelessness and stagnation. And then, naturally, they are surprised when life keeps throwing them more and more reasons for disappointment. However, there is a certain elusive detail, a psychological blind spot that imperceptibly but steadily determines the course of all life. What is this mysterious factor that can fundamentally change the perception of the world and direct energy in a creative direction? The answer to this question will open up new horizons and allow you to take a fresh look at familiar things. It's not just about an optimistic view of the world. That would be too simplistic. It's about a deep awareness of how your mind shapes your perception of reality and why this mechanism, without realizing it, may be holding you back. If you've ever felt like you're doing the right thing, but life keeps revolving around the same difficulties, this video may be a useful lesson in humility for you. Stay tuned, and you'll discover how minor adjustments in your focus can transform your life into what you've always dreamed of. It is important to realize that each person sees the world not as it really is, but through the lens of their own beliefs, and especially through the filter of what they focus their attention on. It's like having a camera fixed to your forehead, constantly pointed at objects that evoke an emotional response. Surprisingly, most people never try to change the scope of their vision. Let's get to the bottom of this issue. The human brain is not an omniscient visionary, but rather a complex system that seeks to identify patterns but has limited resources. Like a powerful accumulator, the human mind is subjected to a massive attack of a colossal flow of information every second. Sounds, visual images, tactile sensations, aromas, fleeting facial expressions, inner thoughts, electronic messages. All of this comes down on us like an avalanche. The brain, unable to process all this gigantic amount of data, resorts to rigid filtering. But what does it leave in its field of attention? First of all, what the consciousness is focused on, what resonates with the inner world of a person, what confirms his established beliefs. Thus, if deep down a person is convinced of the injustice of life, his brain will relentlessly search for every missed opportunity, every lucky person who smiled at fortune, every insignificant unpleasantness that will be perceived as a personal insult. And then the mind will triumphantly declare, "I told you so." But if the focus of attention is on progress, even the smallest of its manifestations, then things begin to come into view that had previously gone unnoticed. A new opportunity hidden in a seemingly insoluble problem, a kindness from a stranger that would have been ignored before, and the realization that, contrary to fears, the day was not wasted. They demonstrated a skill worthy of admiration. This is not just an optimistic attitude, but the result of neurobiology, specifically the reticular activating system. This small structure in the brainstem acts as a filter that processes reality, and it is responsive to what one focuses on, much like a playlist. If you constantly repeat the same negative thoughts, such as I'm failing, I'm not good enough, or I'm at a dead end, the brain begins to create visual images that confirm those beliefs. However, there is a little-known but effective way to hack this system. It's not about denying the existence of problems, but about consciously changing your focus of attention. Start broadcasting new priorities to your brain. I'm more interested in solutions than dramatic experiences. I'm focused on progress rather than perfection. It's more important for me to develop than to find fault. As a result of this redirection of attention, the mental camera begins to capture new perspectives. Reality remains the same, but the person gets the opportunity to see it in its entirety. When the focus of a person's attention shifts, the illusion is created that the world around them is moving with them. But then why do people so persistently fixate on things that pull them down? The answer lies in an insidious habit. It's not a matter of addiction to sweets or nightly vigils watching videos, but a quiet, self-destructive behavior that is mistakenly perceived as controlling the situation. Concentrating on the negative aspects gives the mind something to hold on to. And let's be honest, feeling in control of something, even one's own suffering, often seems preferable to facing frightening uncertainty. After all, the pursuit of personal growth implies the need to look into one's blind spots, to recognize that the familiar picture of the world may be incomplete or distorted. And the mind, as we know, does not like change. It would rather be satisfied with emotional scraps than to start preparing something new. It would rather return to familiar pain than explore the uncharted expanse of tranquility. After all, at least the pain is familiar and predictable. It is sometimes striking how many people seek peace by saying, "I just want peace." Yet paradoxically, they find themselves replaying arguments over and over again, chasing after those who are indifferent to them, or rekindling memories of long-ago conversations that took place 2 years ago on an unremarkable Tuesday, but still live in their minds. And it's not about being broken at all. It's just that the mind, by its very nature, is not set up to serve peace and tranquility. It gravitates to the familiar, and what a person constantly focuses on becomes familiar and ordinary, even if it slowly but surely drains his vitality, deprives him of opportunities, destroys relationships, and takes away his joy. It's like someone diligently planting weeds in their own garden, and then wondering why they can't grow anything valuable or useful. Focus requires constant exercise, just like any muscle. Otherwise, the world will readily take it over. Social media algorithms, news feeds, the people whose approval is so desperately sought, they all wage a relentless battle for a person's mental space and time. And if you don't start consciously choosing what to give your energy to, you can spend your whole life floundering in this chaos. There are moments in every person's life when he or she feels exhausted by the burden of the choice not made, but continues to consume information and impressions. And when the legitimate question arises, why doesn't anything change in my life? The answer, as a rule, lies deep in the subconscious, elusive and uncomfortable. The reason is simple. A person does not change the focus of his attention. He does not find the strength to stop and ask himself, is it worth my precious time and energy at all? Or is it just an ingrained habit that it's time to get rid of? Unfortunately, no one teaches this important skill, to change the focus of one's attention at will, from childhood. A person is allowed to shift their attention without asking anyone's permission, without making excuses, and without waiting until the situation becomes so unbearable that they are simply forced to do so. However, most people only change their focus when they hit rock bottom emotionally. They allow burnout to become their constant companion, anxiety to become part of their daily routine, and the overwhelming weight of unresolved problems to break them. It's only then that they begin to wonder, maybe I shouldn't try to embrace the vastness of the world. But what if a person didn't wait so long? How much longer to procrastinate? What if right now one began to cultivate one's focus, similar to taking care of one's physical fitness, diet, or personal principles? Not by resorting to drastic measures, but simply by consciously abandoning destructive habits. For example, from that obsessive thought that invariably arises in moments of insecurity, deprive it of its fuel, or from the emotional vortex into which you fall every time someone lets you down, stop its development. And finally, from the inner critic, telling you that you are behind, inadequate and unable to succeed, silence his voice. Instead, even if it seems unnatural at first, you should start maintaining positive attitudes, even if they only manifest themselves in small changes that do not bring immediate results. After all, it's this minimal shift in the focus of attention that makes a huge difference. It's a compound interest for the mind. By focusing on what creates, even in small doses, one begins to attract circumstances that match this new focus. The transformation of the mindset does not happen by magic, but as a result of methodical work on oneself. A person begins to notice the most successful ways out of difficult situations, promptly gets rid of activities that bring only a decline in strength. Criticism of others is perceived from a different angle, giving birth not to impulsive defense, but a balanced and reasoned response. One day comes the realization that the former anxieties no longer have power over the mind. And it is not that the world around has become simpler, but that the mind has stopped dwelling on negative aspects. In truth, when the focus of attention shifts to what you really want to feel, create and become, dramatic changes occur. And this is not the result of overexertion, but a consequence of stopping feeding what subconsciously causes rejection. This is where the most important work on yourself begins. After all, it's not just a matter of changing one's thinking, but of transforming one's personality. That version of yourself that a person strengthens on a daily basis, sometimes without even realizing it. Concentration doesn't just shape one's perception of reality, it defines one's self-identity. If one concentrates every day, man tends to self-limitation, focusing on his own faults and flaws, which leads to the belief that they are his essence. And this is not a matter of objectivity, but of selective attention. The mind, which faithfully serves its habits, relentlessly broadcasts the version of personality that the mind emphasizes. However, this exhausted, anxious, and doubtful hypostasis may be merely a reflection of ingrained thoughts rather than a true nature. Such a realization may cause discomfort, for one finds that he has been defending his limitations with the same passion that others pursue their dreams. He has erected a house in the valley of his pain and mistaken it for his identity. Too focused on survival, he forgot to ask himself the question, am I living the life I would like to know? But the most amazing part is that change doesn't require an overnight shift in thinking. You don't need visualization boards or complicated step-by-step plans. All it takes is breaking a habitual pattern. When the consciousness again gravitates to the habitual downward spiral, it is important to decisively stop this movement by saying, "Not today." One must consciously direct one's attention to that part of the personality that seeks development and progress, even if this progression involves slow progress, confusion, and many setbacks. It is important to remember that this version at least is not consumed with the idea of staying where it is just because of the sense of comfort it provides. Certainly at first, this switch may seem unnatural, even like a sham. However, it is not a sham, but rather a readjustment, a process that points the mind to a new, more constructive purpose. It's like putting on an improved filter, a more powerful lens that allows you to see the world in a different light. Power doesn't come from thoughts of might. It comes from changing what our attention is fueled by. Instead of drama, fear, and imagined inner conflicts, we need to focus on truth, calm, and direction. The mind is inherently prone to wandering. It is its natural state. However, by training the ability to concentrate, we teach it to wander in a helpful direction. This is like training an animal. Instead of letting it wander aimlessly, we teach it to follow certain commands and move toward a desired goal. In this way, the constant practice of concentration allows us to direct the energy of the mind toward creation and accomplishment. An overwhelming number of people do not realize the enormous energy expenditure they incur on a daily basis. The reason for this lies not in the excessive complexity of existence, but in the catastrophic dispersion of attention. This is akin to trying to read several books at the same time, answering emails in parallel, watching news feeds, mentally revisiting past conflicts, and then being perplexed by the feeling of exhaustion that sets in before noon. Paradoxically, the person may not even realize what is happening, as the constant stream of stimuli creates the illusion of frenetic activity. Flipping through self-development materials, analyzing the actions of others, rehearsing answers that should have been given in the past. All of this creates the appearance of moving forward, although in reality, it is just random noise, masquerading as progress. This incessant flow of information and pseudo-activity deprives man of the opportunity for true development, because his life cannot move in a certain direction when his attention is fragmented into a dozen different objects. Especially considering that most of these objects have no significant meaning in the long run. In this case, the need is not to increase motivation, but to minimize distractions. One should not be overzealous in striving for more. It is necessary to stop feeding those emotional processes that run unnoticed in the depths of consciousness, like an overheating laptop that wastes energy. Concentration often seems unattractive, devoid of brightness and noise. It is quiet and almost imperceptible, yet it is the underrated superpower that everyone possesses. When attention becomes crystal clear, actions become clear and focused. And when actions are clear, life becomes simpler and more harmonious. In this simplicity lies the return of lost energy. Man ceases to spend himself on the emotional experience of events that are beyond his control. He stops seeking the attention of those who show no interest in return. He stops visiting places that drain him simply because he has done so in the past. True transformation is not about becoming an entirely new person, but about focusing on the version of yourself that has been buried under the weight of external noise and distractions. And this process begins with the ability to direct attention rather than diffuse it. It's not about goals, it's about simply paying attention. What does each person actually do to feed his or her thoughts from day to day? And does it do any good, or just give the appearance of busyness? There is something truly underrated about being able to choose what not to give your attention to. It is not always necessary to heal or resolve something. Sometimes it is enough to simply stop feeding it. Not everything in life requires closure. Not every thought deserves deep analysis. And not every emotion needs to be passed into 10 slides to be shared on social media. Some things lose their power the moment a person stops giving them importance. That's how maturity shows itself. In the ability to not react to everything that takes energy, but to simply observe, letting it pass by, and not letting it define one's personality for the day. And here's the irony. When a person stops paying so much attention to the things that drain them, they finally have the opportunity to notice the things that really work, the things that seemed invisible before. This includes personal growth, patience, and more. When a person gains the ability to confidently say no, the virtues around them begin to show up more vividly. This is not because these qualities have undergone a change, but because the person has finally allocated enough attention to notice them. Unfortunately, most people do not achieve this realization, remaining in a vicious cycle of constantly dealing with problems that do not really require their intervention, but only need to be released. These people waste their energy seeking approval, overanalyze periods of silence, create entire stories based on fleeting shadows, and mistake this for self-awareness. True self-awareness, however, is not about endlessly reflecting on one's past suffering, but in realizing that one's identity is shaped by what one focuses on. Therefore, if a person is constantly fixated on who he was in moments of pain and suffering, we should not be surprised that the healing process seems impossible. After all, he or she is not paying proper attention to the version of him or herself that successfully overcame the difficulties and became stronger. It is important to realize that this strong version already exists within everyone. It does not need to be created anew. You just need to start directing your attention in its direction. Finding inner strength is often a challenge. It requires relinquishing the role of the central figure in one's own life drama and moving to the position of the invisible creator. This change of focus does not bring instant applause, but genuine freedom. It is important to remember, it is not necessary to know the answers to all questions. The key becomes the ability to determine what deserves attention and energy and what does not. True power lies not in reacting to every stimulus or trying to control all outcomes, but in consciously choosing what is allowed into one's personal mental space. Often people squander their energy on things that will be irrelevant in a week. They spend precious hours on fruitless thinking about situations that will not bring satisfaction, and then are surprised to feel disconnected from the world. However, there is another way to make your focus a valuable resource. Intentionally channeling energy, rather than dissipating it through inertia, becomes a key aspect of self-control. Of course, the path will not be flawless. There will inevitably be moments of weakness, overthinking, and the occasional return to old habits. However, every effort to return your attention to activities that promote personal growth entails a restructuring of the underlying mechanisms that transcends mere motivation. It is a daily, quiet, and powerful return of control over one's mind. Reaching this stage marks a transformation. While most people give up the fight when the habitual flow of dopamine distractions subsides, there remain those who keep moving forward. Join the chosen ones by tagging yourself with the word "focused" in the comments. If content like this has a reboot effect on the mind, the next steps are obvious: expressing support, subscribing to the channel, and waiting for new material. It's important to keep your mind sharp and protect your inner world as the priceless treasure that it essentially